I am 34 years old. I am a physician. And for years, I paid $800 a month to live in my childhood bedroom in the Bronx while quietly becoming the unpaid help this family never admitted they needed. Then one Saturday night, my mother sat me down and told me to either watch my sister's kids 4 mornings a week for free or start paying $2,100 a month. Market price, she said, like I was a stranger. That was the night I stopped trying to make things work and started planning my way out. Before I get into everything that happened, I want to know where you are watching this from. Drop your city or your country in the comments right now. And if you have ever been the person in your family who always gives and never receives, hit that like button because this story is for you. Subscribe if you are new here, because I share real stories about real decisions that changed everything, and you do not want to miss what comes next. Now let me take you back to the beginning, because that Saturday night did not come out of nowhere. It was the result of years of small things that nobody ever talked about. I did not grow up expecting anything to be handed to me. My name is Coruscant, and I earned everything I have. I got into medical school on a full academic scholarship for the first 2 years, then took on loans for the rest. During my residency, I was working 80 hours a week, living in a studio I could barely afford, eating whatever was cheapest at the grocery store near the hospital. I did not complain about any of that. I chose medicine because I wanted it, and I was willing to pay the price. My sister Vanessa did not take that road. She was 2 years younger than me, and from the time we were teenagers, the dynamic in our house was clear. I was the one who was expected to figure things out. Vanessa was the one who was given room to struggle without consequence. When I needed money for a school trip at 16, I babysat the neighbors' kids to earn it. When Vanessa wanted new shoes that same year, my mother bought them without hesitation. I noticed these things, but I told myself they did not matter. I was going somewhere. I had a plan. By the time I finished my residency and started working at a hospital in Manhattan, I had more than $90,000 in student loan debt. My salary was good, but after taxes, loan payments, and living expenses in New York City, there was not a lot left over. When my mother called and suggested I move back into my old room for $800 a month, I thought it was a genuine offer. She said it would help me pay down my debt faster. She said it would be good to have the family together. I believed her and I moved in. For the first few months, everything seemed reasonable. I paid my $800 on time every month. I bought groceries when I noticed we were running low. I helped my father Gerald with yard work on weekends when I had time. My mother Patrice cooked most evenings, and it felt briefly like a normal family arrangement. Vanessa was living there too with her 2 children. Lily was 4 years old and Noah had just turned 2. Vanessa's husband had left shortly after Noah was born, and she had moved back in with our parents. She was not working. My parents explained that she needed time to stabilize after everything that had happened with her marriage. I understood that. I did not judge her for it. I just assumed it was temporary. The first time I ended up watching Lily and Noah was about 6 weeks after I moved in. My mother came to my room at 6:45 in the morning and said Vanessa had a doctor's appointment and could I just keep an eye on the kids for a couple of hours. I said yes. I moved my morning around, made the kids breakfast, kept them occupied until Vanessa came back around noon. I did not think much of it. People ask for help sometimes. That is normal. The second time was 2 weeks later. Then it happened again the week after that. Within 3 months, I was watching Lily and Noah an average of 3 mornings a week. Nobody asked me formally. It just accumulated. Vanessa would still be in her room when I came downstairs. My mother would be in the kitchen, and she would say something like, "The kids are up, can you just sit with them while I make calls?" And I would do it because saying no felt like a fight I did not have the energy for before a 12-hour shift. I want to be honest about something. There were mornings I genuinely did not mind. Lily was a funny, talkative little girl who liked to tell me long stories about her stuffed animals. Noah was quieter, still figuring out words, but he would sit in my lap and that felt like something good. I was not resentful of the children. I was resentful of the system that had formed around them without anyone ever asking if I agreed to be part of it. My schedule at the hospital was not 9 to 5. Some mornings I had to be there by 6. Some nights I did not get home until after 10. When I had an early shift, I would come downstairs and find my mother in the kitchen already with the kids, and she would give me a look that I can only describe as disappointed, as though my job was an inconvenience I was choosing over the family. She never said that out loud. She did not have to. The childcare was not the only thing. There were the groceries I started buying regularly, because I noticed the kitchen was always low on things, and nobody else seemed to be restocking it. There was the electric bill I paid one month when my mother mentioned it had come in higher than expected, and they were short. There was the afternoon I spent driving Vanessa to a grocery store 6 miles away because she did not have a car and my mother's knees were bothering her. There were the small repairs around the house that I paid for because it seemed easier than watching my father struggle with them. None of these things were formally requested. They accumulated through hints, through sighs, through sentences that started with, "I don't know how we're going to," and trailed off. I filled in the gaps. I always had. That was the role I had been trained for since childhood, and I had never stopped to examine whether I had actually agreed to it. When I brought up once that I was tired, my mother said, "Vanessa is more tired. She's doing this alone." When I mentioned once that I was having a hard week at the hospital, my father nodded and then immediately asked if I could take a look at the bathroom faucet because it had been dripping. The message, delivered without anyone ever stating it plainly, was that my needs ranked somewhere below the general comfort of everyone else in the house. About a year before the ultimatum, I came home from a 14-hour shift to find Noah sitting in the hallway outside Vanessa's closed bedroom door, crying. He had been there long enough that he was hiccuping between sobs. I knocked on Vanessa's door and she called out that she was resting and she would be out in a minute. I picked Noah up, got him settled in the living room, and then I went back and knocked again. Vanessa came out looking annoyed. That night I sat down with my mother, and I told her this could not keep going. I said I was not in a position to be a backup caregiver on an unpredictable schedule around a demanding medical job. I said it as clearly as I could, and I was not angry when I said it. I was just stating facts. My mother cried. She told me I was being cold toward a sister who was suffering. My father came in partway through and said that family means sacrifice and that I should try to be more understanding. By the end of the conversation I had apologized, though I still cannot tell you exactly what I apologized for. I went back to my room and sat on my bed and felt the particular exhaustion of someone who just lost an argument they were right about. After that night nothing changed. The mornings continued, the groceries continued, the sighs and the gaps I was expected to fill continued, and I continued to fill them because I did not yet understand that nothing was going to change until I changed it. The Saturday night my mother told me to either watch Lily and Noah 4 mornings a week or pay $2,100 a month. Something became clear that I had been avoiding for a long time. The $800 I paid every month had never been a discount offered out of generosity. It had been the price set for a version of me that included free childcare, household contributions, and permanent availability. The arrangement had always been transactional. I had just not been given the full terms in writing. Now they needed more from me, and they had simply raised the price. That was the entire logic of what happened that night. There was no cruelty in it exactly. There was just an assumption that I would calculate the numbers and conclude that compliance was cheaper. They were not wrong about the math. They were wrong about what I was willing to pay. I did not make any decisions that Saturday night. I went to bed, stared at the ceiling for a while, and let myself think without reaching for a conclusion. By Monday morning I had a clearer head, and I sat down with my finances. My take-home pay after taxes was just over $7,000 a month. My student loan payment was $1,400. With groceries, transportation, and personal expenses, I typically spent around another $1,000. That left me with roughly $4,600 each month after my current rent of $800. If I paid $2,100 to stay where I was, I would have $3,100 left. That was tight but manageable, except that I would also still be providing free childcare and absorbing the other household costs I had been carrying quietly. The real cost of staying was not $2,100. It was higher than that, and it was paid in things that do not show up on a bank statement. I looked at rental listings in the Bronx and nearby neighborhoods. A decent studio in Kingsbridge was going for around $1,650 a month, with some utilities included. I could afford that. I would be tighter on savings initially, but I would be the only person making decisions about my time and my money. I started searching in the evenings after everyone had gone to bed. I contacted 3 landlords over the course of 2 weeks. The first apartment was too far from the hospital, adding nearly 40 minutes to my commute each way. The second was in a building with issues I was not comfortable with after seeing the common areas. The third was a studio in Kingsbridge, about 20 minutes from the hospital by subway. It was clean, well-maintained, and managed by a man named Dennis Farrell, who was around 60 and ran his properties with the kind of straightforwardness I had come to deeply appreciate. I met Dennis on a Thursday evening after a short shift. He reviewed my pay stubs and employment verification without drama and said I was approved. We signed the lease that same evening. My move-in date was 3 weeks away. I wrote a check for the security deposit and first month's rent and left with a copy of the lease, which I kept locked in my desk drawer at the hospital. The next 3 weeks were a study in patience. I began moving my belongings out gradually, one bag at a time, in the late evenings after the house was quiet. I did not have a great deal of things. Years of medical training and small apartments had made me practical about possessions. I had clothes, medical textbooks, my laptop, a box of personal documents, and a few things that mattered to me personally. Every few nights I would carry one bag or box to my car and drive it over to Dennis's building, where he had agreed to let me store a few things in a small utility space near my unit. Within 2.5 weeks, I had moved roughly 70% of what I owned without anyone in the house noticing or asking a single question. That fact told me something, though I chose not to spend too long thinking about it. 2 weeks before the move, I updated my address with my bank, my insurance provider, the hospital's human resources department, and every other institution that had my current address on file. I did all of this during lunch breaks at the hospital. By the time moving day arrived, there was no administrative thread connecting me to that house, except the lease I was about to vacate. I thought about telling my parents I was leaving. I thought about it seriously more than once. But every time I walked through how that conversation would go, I arrived at the same place. There would be tears. There would be accusations. There would be the familiar pressure of being told that I was abandoning Vanessa, that my mother's health could not take the stress, that family does not walk away. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, I would feel the old pull to apologize and stay. I had proven once already that I was not yet strong enough to hold a boundary in real time with these particular people. I was not going to put myself in that position again. Leaving without a prior announcement was not about hurting them. It was about protecting a decision I had already made cleanly and needed to keep clean. The Sunday before my move-in date, I waited until 11 at night. The house was dark. I could hear my father's television through the wall of his bedroom, which meant he was almost certainly asleep with it on, the way he always did. Vanessa's light was off. My mother's door was closed. My friend Daria had driven over and parked around the corner. She did not ask me a lot of questions. She had known me long enough to understand that when I had made a decision, I had made it. We worked quietly for just over an hour, moving the last of my things to her car and mine. When we were done, my room contained the bed frame, the desk, and nothing else that belonged to me. I went to the kitchen and left an envelope on the table. Inside was a money order for $800, covering my final month's rent. There was also a handwritten note. It said, "I have moved out. I will not be paying $2,100 a month. I wish everyone well. Coruscant." I drove to Kingsbridge. Daria followed. We unloaded everything into my new apartment in under an hour. When she left, I sat down on the floor because I did not have my furniture set up yet, and I stayed there for a little while. Not because I was sad, because I was trying to understand what it felt like to be in a space that was entirely mine. My mother discovered my empty room at 7 in the morning when she walked past it on her way to the kitchen. She called me immediately. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. I counted 8 calls in 20 minutes. On the 9th, I picked up. I told her I had moved out, that I had left the final month's rent in the envelope on the kitchen table, and that I would not be returning. She said I was ungrateful. She said I was abandoning the family. She said she could not believe a daughter of hers would do something like this. I told her I loved her and my father, but that I could not stay in the arrangement they had put forward. Then I said goodbye and ended the call. I had to be at the hospital in 40 minutes, and I was not going to be late. Vanessa called about 10 minutes after my mother. Her first question was not, "Are you okay?" or "What happened?" Her first question was who was going to watch the kids that morning. I told her that Lily and Noah were her children and that she was responsible for them. She said I was selfish. I said I had to go to work. I ended that call too. I want to be honest about what that moment felt like. There was no satisfaction in it. I did not feel like I had won anything. I felt the particular weight of someone who has just removed themselves from a role they were never supposed to be playing and is now watching the gap become visible. It was not a pleasant feeling, but it was an honest one. That evening I came home from my shift to find my parents and Vanessa standing outside my building. Vanessa had found out my new address through a mutual acquaintance who knew the area. I stood on the sidewalk and I did not raise my voice. My father spoke first, which surprised me. He was usually the one who stayed quiet. He said I had embarrassed the family and that what I had done showed a lack of character. My mother said that if I did not come back, she was not sure she could consider me her daughter anymore. I listened to all of it. Then I said in a level voice that I had been asked to provide free childcare 4 mornings a week or pay full market rent, and that I had chosen neither. I said that had been my right. My father said family required sacrifice. I asked him to tell me the last time a sacrifice in this family had been asked of anyone other than me. No one answered. My mother repeated her statement about not being sure she could consider me her daughter. I told her I understood and I wished all three of them well. Then I went inside. Over the next 2 weeks I received messages from several extended family members. 2 aunts told me I had gone too far. A cousin texted to ask if I was all right. My mother's sister called and said she had heard what happened and that she was proud of me, which I had not expected. I responded briefly to the people who seemed genuinely concerned and did not respond to the rest. I did not compose long explanations or justifications. I simply was not available for arguments I had already settled within myself. 3 weeks after moving out, I received a message from a cousin telling me that my mother had been telling family and close friends that I had abandoned the family because I did not want to help Vanessa during a hard time. That framing was spreading. People who knew nothing about the rent ultimatum or the years of unpaid childcare were hearing a version of events in which I was simply a cold, self-interested daughter who had walked out on a struggling sister. I thought about it for 2 days. I am generally a private person. I did not want to put family business online, but I also understood that silence in this situation was not neutrality. Silence was simply allowing one version of the story to stand unchallenged. I decided to write something. I posted on my personal social media account, which at the time had a modest following of people I actually knew. I did not use anyone's name. I described the situation plainly, the rental arrangement, the years of informal childcare that had never been agreed to formally, the ultimatum, and my decision to leave. I kept the tone factual. I did not call anyone a bad person. I ended with one line: loving your family and accepting every condition they place on you are not the same thing. The post was shared more than I anticipated. Most of the responses were from people who said they recognized the dynamic I was describing. A number of people shared their own versions of the same story. A smaller number said I should have been more patient or more compassionate toward Vanessa's situation. I read those responses too. I did not find them persuasive, but I read them. My mother and Vanessa found the post within a couple of days. Vanessa sent me a message demanding I take it down. My mother called twice, but I did not pick up. I did not take the post down. Dennis Farrell, my landlord, mentioned to me a few weeks later that he was a passing acquaintance of my father's and had come across something I had written online. He said he hoped things would settle down in time. He did not take a side, but he said it, and that small act of acknowledgement from someone neutral meant something. Without me in the house, the childcare arrangement that had formed around my availability collapsed. Vanessa applied for a part-time position at a pharmacy near the house within 6 weeks of my leaving. My parents took on the morning childcare themselves on the days Vanessa worked, which my mother later told my cousin was exhausting. I do not say that with satisfaction. I say it because it confirmed what I had known for a long time. The labor was real, it had always been real, and someone had to do it. The question had only ever been who. I want to be clear about something because I think it matters. When I heard that Vanessa had gotten a job, I did not feel vindicated. When I heard my mother was tired from watching the grandchildren, I did not feel pleased. What I felt was something closer to sadness, the kind that comes from recognizing that a situation only had to reach the point it reached because no one was willing to name it honestly years earlier, including me. I had stayed quiet for a long time. I had absorbed things I should have addressed. That was not virtue, that was avoidance, and I own that part. The studio in Kingsbridge became home faster than I expected. I had spent so long living in spaces that belonged to other people's routines that having a space organized entirely around my own schedule felt unfamiliar at first, and then felt correct. I did not have to arrange my morning around someone else's child. I did not have to be quiet after 10 at night out of consideration for people who would wake me at 6 regardless. I set up my space the way it made sense to me. I kept my medical books in a specific order. I cooked when I wanted to cook and did not cook when I did not. I worked late on nights I needed to without anyone waiting up or commenting on my hours. These are small things, but after years of not having them, they were not small to me. In the 6 months after I moved out, I applied for a fellowship in cardiology at the hospital. It was something I had been thinking about for more than a year, but had always found a reason to delay. The application required time outside of regular hours, preparation, and mental focus that I had previously been giving away to family logistics. I was accepted into the fellowship 4 months after applying. My supervising physician, Dr. Lorraine Webb, told me during the acceptance meeting that my file had been strong for longer than I realized, and that she was glad I had finally put it forward. I did not tell her why the timing had been what it was. I just thanked her and meant it completely. My father called me about 4 months after I moved out. It was a short call. He did not explain himself or revisit what had happened. He asked if I was doing well. I told him I was. He said he was glad. That was most of it. It was not a resolution. But it was a door opening slightly, and I decided to let it stay open. He is my father. Whatever happened, that is still true. My mother has not called. I have not called her either. I do not know what a conversation between us would look like right now, and I am not forcing one. If she calls, I will answer. Vanessa and I have had no contact. I have nothing to say to Vanessa that would be productive at this point, and I do not believe she is interested in anything I might say. That is fine. Some relationships require distance to survive and some do not survive at all, and either outcome is acceptable when the alternative is continued harm. I had spent years operating under the belief that being a good daughter meant being available and accommodating without limit. Every time I gave more than I had agreed to give, I told myself it was love. But love is not the same as unlimited availability, and generosity that comes from guilt is not really generosity. The hardest lesson was not learning to leave. The hardest lesson was understanding that I had waited so long because some part of me believed that if I was useful enough, I would eventually be treated as though I mattered. That is not how it worked. The more I gave without naming a limit, the more normal it became for there to be no limit at all. Setting a boundary is not a punishment directed at someone else. It is information about what you need to remain whole. I did not explain that well enough to myself for a very long time. I did not leave and find everything resolved. I left and found space. Space to breathe, to work at the level I am capable of, to exist in a day that runs according to my own decisions. The grief of a complicated family situation does not disappear because you make a good decision. It sits with you differently. There are mornings I think about Lily and Noah. I hope they are well. I hope Vanessa is figuring out how to be the parent they need. I hope my father's health holds. I hope my mother is okay. I can hold all of that and still know I made the right choice. I am not fully healed from the years that led up to that Saturday night. I do not think that is how this works. But I am no longer carrying weight that was never mine to carry. And that, after everything, is enough to build a life on. Here is what I want to ask you, and I mean this genuinely. If you have ever been in a situation where someone you love set a condition on your relationship and expected you to simply accept it, what did you do? Did you stay? Did you negotiate? Did you leave? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and those conversations are the reason I keep sharing stories like this. If this story reached you in some way, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do. I share stories about real decisions, real consequences, and what life actually looks like after you choose yourself. New stories come out every week. Click like if you are leaving with something to think about. I am grateful you were here for this one, and I will see you in the next.